During the original development of the F-15, a fair amount of effort was put into resisting suggestions to add additional ground attack or interdiction capability to the plane. It was felt at the time that adding the mission equipment needed for ground strikes and compatibility with emerging air-to-ground weapons would cause delays, degrade air combat performance, balloon the cost, and most critically, add extra dead weight to the plane that would be useless in air combat. The F-15 Special Project Office borrowed an old slogan and supposedly had a banner in their office reading, "Not a pound for air-to-ground." Despite all this, McDonnell Douglas included some very basic compatibility with existing air-to-ground weapons, but was still careful not to make any compromises with air-to-air combat performance. They worked privately in the background on a set of potential future modifications to the design that would allow it to function as a multi-role fighter, and a few years later that work started to pay off. In 1981, the Air Force started soliciting proposals for a replacement to the F-111 and a few other planes that were lingering on in ground strike roles. They wanted something that could do long-range interdiction at high or low altitudes without needing a fighter escort and would still be credible in air combat. The two main proposals were the delta-winged F-16XL and the F-15E, which was based on that background work I mentioned. The F-15E, now called the Strike Eagle, was selected after the formal evaluation, and it started final development from prototypes into an operational aircraft. It wasn't until 1988 that the F-15E finally started entering service. Compared to the original F-15, the new Strike Eagle had some structural changes to its basic design, a dramatically updated combat system to include air-to-ground weapons compatibility, a second crew member as standard, a new set of defensive systems, and a radar set with improved ability to detect ground targets. The plane is still in service to this day and has been used operationally in several conflicts. What we're looking at in War Thunder is the F-15E, a strike jet in rank 8 of the American tech tree at battle rating 13.7 for air and 12.7 for ground. This jet gets a full top-tier ballistics computer, helmet-mounted targeting, an EEGS, and the AN/ALR-56C radar warning receiver with all of the usual rank 8 features. Its radar is the AN/APG-70, an I-band set with, again, all of the usual top-tier modes, plus ground targeting mode and ground track wall scan for picking up moving targets on the ground. This is a pretty big boost for the US tech tree. For loadouts, this plane gets the full air-to-air kit of the other F-15s, plus a huge selection of guided air-to-ground weapons, a targeting pod, dumb bombs, and fuel tanks. For air-to-air missiles, your dogfight weapons are the AIM-9L and AIM-9M. You're probably familiar with these by now. Both are all-aspect infrared missiles, with the 9M getting infrared countermeasures, and it's generally smokeless. For radar missiles, you start off with the AIM-7M. This is the same semi-active radar missile that you've used before by now, and it'll probably be a strong source of kills while you're grinding upgrades. It's not the best up at rank 8, but it still works good enough to get some hits. You graduate to the AIM-120B. This is an active radar homing missile with really strong overall performance, good range, and high reliability. If you're new to active radar missiles, I'll put a link to my complete missile guide in the comments. For air-to-ground weapons, you get a selection of laser-guided bombs in various sizes. My personal preference is the GBU-24 Paveway 3, as it hits hard and has 90 seconds of tracking time. You also get a variety of infrared-guided munitions, including the D and G versions of the Maverick and the GBU-15 IR-guided bomb. These all have the advantage of being fire and forget, but remember that sometimes the Mavericks won't always one-shot an MBT at the top tier if they don't have a good impact angle. Lastly, you get some satellite-guided weapons, including the new GBU-39 glide bombs. These are all fire and forget, but can only target fixed points on the ground, and the glide bombs can take quite a while to impact, but they have some counterintuitive utility in close air support, which I'll get to in a few minutes. In terms of its flight performance, the Strike Eagle generally retains the positive qualities of the F-15, but frankly, it's even better. At least it can be. This version of the Eagle has upgraded engines which help mitigate energy retention issues and weight issues, but not completely. The Strike Eagle still has amazing agility, and its climb performance is, as of making this review, basically unmatched. The catch is, all that extra engine power and performance gets dragged back down to normal when the plane is loaded up with weapons and fuel. If you fly out in a clean air-to-air configuration with no conformal fuel tanks and a moderate fuel load, nothing will be able to touch you. But if you go out with 500 JDAMs, drop tanks, bunch of missiles, and full fuel, try to remember that you're going to lose a lot of performance potential until you've shed off the dead weight. Even weighted up, though, the Strike Eagle won't be a brick, but it's just going to be a noticeable difference. When you take the F-15E out in air battles, you're in for a treat. The combination of great air-to-air missiles, incredible flight performance, and a good radar set allow it to fight the current top-tier air combat meta very effectively. The addition of its air-to-ground ordnance allows you to do ground attack on top of air-to-air, which really makes this jet a very good multi-role strike fighter, which was, of course, the whole point of the F-15E. One big limitation you'll have to deal with is that the loadout options can be a little odd. A lot of the weapon options share the same pylons or block other selections, so for example, if you take racks of GBU-39s mounted on the fuselage, you'll lose a pair of missiles, as those options block each other even though they're not actually on the same pylons. You can, however, still take a smaller number of GBU-39s on the center line and use them to do long-range attacks on a base from like halfway across the map before you go in for air combat. Another option for ground attack is just to load 3 of the Mk-84 dumb bombs along with your air-to-air loadout, which is enough to take out a base. Otherwise, if you're focused on air combat, you'll find that the Strike Eagle performs as well or better than other F-15s already in the game. When it comes to close air support, the usual top-tier meta still applies. You're at the mercy of cloud cover, and top-tier SPAA is serious business. However, the Strike Eagle really levels the playing field in terms of top-tier close air support for the American tech tree. Its ground radar can help find moving targets, and combined with really good targeting pod, you've got a strong sensor set. Plus, there's a new trick you can use. The plane can take a very large quantity of the GBU-39 glide bombs, and here's the thing, don't use them as bombs, use them as decoys. Just target a random spot on the red side of the map and periodically drop them as you're getting into position for your Mavericks or other guided bombs. I actually had fairly good luck with this, as the glide bombs are really slow and will sometimes trigger proximity fuses on SAMs that are coming in your direction, or they can decoy Pansirs in track while scan that target them by mistake at long range. This isn't a surefire thing, and yeah, it's kind of a gimmick, but I was able to make it work multiple times while flying this jet. Visually, the F-15E looks basically like other F-15s, and it's still just as badass. The one gripe I have is that the in-game paint jobs we get are all really bland, and hopefully we'll get some more options going forward. The landing performance is similar to other top-tier jets, but keep in mind that it doesn't get a drag chute. So if you set down too fast, you're going to need a lot of runway to slow down. It can safely drop gear at over 650 kilometers an hour, and landing flaps a bit under 500. The Strike Eagle's cockpit is very well detailed, with large MFDs, a useful HUD, some basic info on the helmet, and great overall visibility. This is a really good cockpit for VR, and I had a blast with this thing. To close out on the F-15E Strike Eagle. This jet has amazing flight performance, a strong set of air-to-air weapons, a strong set of air-to-ground weapons, and a good set of sensors. However, building loadouts can be a little cumbersome with some of the different options blocking each other. The final verdict on the F-15E is that this jet evens the playing field for top-tier American close air support and gives the US tree a multi-role fighter that can credibly do just about anything. This plane can absolutely be your one-stop shop in the US tech tree. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one.